Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CS Cyber. I'm Chad.
I'm Sean.
And today we're continuing our NIST 800-171 series, and we're talking about risk assessments.
Sounds exciting.
It is. So risk assessments enable organizations to identify, analyze, and respond to risks, not just at a point in time, but over time. And it really helps them to impact the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their systems that are housing CUI. So
Right.
By proactively managing risks, organizations can mitigate vulnerabilities before they're exploited by threat actors. So the risk assessment control family really focuses on identifying and managing risks with handling CUI data. So it requires organizations to assess their cybersecurity risk regularly and then implement ongoing corrective actions.
Okay.
So you can't just wait for the auditors to show back up and be like, yeah, we knew about that. And
Right.
we forgot about that. So you were kind of talking about this a little bit beforehand, right? So this is where your risk register comes in, your management review meetings where other people, other parts of the organization are involved there. They're bringing risk to the table. And you're really kind of having like an overview, like management discussion to identify risk to the business and how you're going to mitigate those.
Right.
So a couple of key objectives there. You want to establish a formal risk assessment process, identify threats, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts, implement controls to mitigate identified risks, and then continually monitor and reassess risks over time. Right.
Okay.
So that's really like where your risk register comes into play, and you never want to take anything off your risk register. You're just going to add to it. You're going to accept the risk. You're going to remediate the risks, things like that, right?
It's almost like a POAM too, like a plan of action and milestones.
Yeah, that's where it also, a POAM is required for NIST 800-171 and CMMC compliance, so that's something you'll definitely want to have. I think one part that I wanted to talk about here is the formal risk assessment process, right? So when you're looking at risk, you're going to want to be able to categorize those. You're going to want to be able to quantify those. So there's a lot of software platforms out there that can help you build your risk register and guide you through this. I found that this is a very difficult thing to do, just to kind of make up on your own, right? In any organization of any size, and the reason I say that is because what may be a 5 to me isn't a 5 to you. And then you get into like the back and forth of, well, what does this number really mean, right? So if you have a platform for that, it kind of lays it out for you and at least gives you a starting kind of framework to work with inside of.
Sure.
Right? So for this control family, there's 3 sub-controls you want to take a look at. And just some practical examples of, risk assessment mechanisms, right? So you'll want a risk matrix, and that's really kind of where the platform comes into place. It'll kind of help you with that. Threat modeling, identify attack vectors and potential system weaknesses before they can be exploited, right? I think everyone in the organization probably has a perspective on that, especially in their part of the business, right? So having others, I guess what I'm trying to say here, IT can't say, oh, well, this is a risk for you, and this is a risk for you, right? Because they don't know that part of the business. So having others at the table that can bring those risks forward can really help IT kind of get a holistic picture.
Okay.
Automated vulnerability scanning. If you're not scanning your systems, you got to start doing that. We're doing continuous now, so it's not just a once a month type thing anymore. And then tabletop exercises, right? So conducting simulated scenarios to evaluate the response and effectiveness to some of these risks and how you're going to mitigate those.
I'd say probably those last ones, like automated vulnerability scanning and tabletop exercises, are probably some of the 2 most important ones that I know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of people that say they have a plan, but they've never practiced that plan. And
right
when you get people together, they're like, "What's the plan?" Like, I've never seen this plan. So
right. Well, and the vulnerability scanning piece. I mean, I think a lot of organizations have, gotten rid of vulnerability scanning because they saw it as more of a luxury item, but it's absolutely critical.
Yep. So just some implementation best practices, develop a formal risk assessment policy, use automated risk assessment tools. That's like what I was talking about with the platforms, engage leadership and stakeholders, and then document the risk findings, right? So you want to document everything as you kind of go through the NIST framework. But some products that can help. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. I mean, NIST has like some free tools that'll kind of help guide you through this. There's better tools, but they have some spreadsheets and things that can help you. Better, I mean, like a Tenable.io for vulnerability management. We use Connect Secure. And then best is really like we have like a full GRC platform, right? And that is really, I think that really helps people kind of go through compliance in bite-sized chunks versus just, oh my God, I have this Excel spreadsheet that has like all the NIST requirements on there, and I spend most of my time trying to decipher what the NIST framework is trying to ask me, to do that. So there's a lot of GRC platforms out there. If you're struggling to get started, contact us because we have, some that we use, and we'd be happy to walk you through that. But you got to get something. Excel spreadsheets are just too hard to manage, like the documentation and things like that. So,
yep, absolutely.
Some key policies and procedures to address this control family. You'll want a risk assessment policy, vulnerability management procedure, incident response plan, continuous monitoring program.
The continuous piece is probably the biggest thing I preach nowadays, especially when I'm speaking in public about how we need to exchange everything for, a yearly pen test or a quarterly vulnerability scan to continuous.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So looks like there's 3 controls: the risk assessment, vulnerability scanning, and remediation procedures. You'll need a good policy for those. And then just some common challenges, right, as a lack of resources, right? So we see a lot of organizations that this kind of work just kind of naturally falls to IT director or whoever's running, that. And if they're struggling to just keep the lights on, this is likely not occurring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keeping up with emerging threats, that's another one, right? Unless you have like a dedicated like cyber team that's watching these, it's really a misconception, I think, to believe that your IT organization is doing all of these things.
Well, just having like plugging into something like our nonprofit, the Go Cyber Collective, right, is a good way of saying I'm keeping up by emerging threats because I meet with these with this group once a month.
Right. And then interpreting the risk data, understanding and prioritizing risk findings can be complex without tools or expertise, right? So that's where having others in the organization come to the table and bring those risks forward that IT doesn't really know about is really beneficial. So, so you got anything else today?
No, we've been doing risk assessments for 10 years, and it's we lead with them. It's one of the most it's one of the most important things you can do. It can be one of the most complex things because we end up unearthing a lot of things that you don't know about, but highly recommend this. I mean, not only just from a policy perspective, but just in general.
Yeah, and it's it's an easy way to get started, right? I mean, you can spend invest some time to kind of really go through your environment, and you're going to get a lot out of that you can move forward with. So,
yeah.
So that's all we have for today. Stay tuned where we talk about a similar topic next week. We're going to be talking about security assessments.
All right. Sounds good. See you next time.